the genocidal technologies pandemic and resulted in the 2010 what's called Lockstep Rockefeller Foundation Global Business Report, Global Business Network report that set out the design of this pandemic, that set out the opening ceremonies of the London 2012 London Olympics, where the NHS, in the opening ceremonies, they had sort of a ceremony around foreboding National Health Service nurses on global TV in a global pandemic. So this is part of what we call Luciferian in your face. It's sort of acting out the pandemic. And this was all set out in 2010 Rockefeller report, which culminated in a drill called Event 201 on October 18th, 2019, held in New York, which was a drill which preceded the entire 2020 pandemic, and which set up all sorts of committees, including people like Dr. Fauci, Bill Gates, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And on that same date, 18th, 2019, was the opening ceremonies of the World Military Games in Wuhan, China, whose opening ceremony was on the same day as Event 201, and where the coronavirus itself was featured in the opening ceremony, this enormous coronavirus in the state that started in the wet food markets of Wuhan, whereas it had started in the CIA bioweapons labs in affiliated, and the COVID-19 was a production of the U.S., or we can call the deep state bioweapons consortium, by the evidence. So all of this appears in our 108-page indictment. Now, we go on.
Hold on a second, Alfred. People can obtain that by going to peaceinspace.org.
Yes, they can download the 108-page indictment. And
one more thing, Dr. Rima, you'll find this interesting. Our live stream has failed twice so far since the start. We have to restart it. So far, this is the third time. All right, I'm sorry. Alfred, go back. We're back to you.
Yeah. So among the other things that the emergency in 29th, 2020 of the tribunal has banned are detention centers, concentration camps, etc., which are themselves genocidal and which are intended to destroy the middle class, the working class, and all economic small businesses, except the big boxes and the Amazons of the world, where the world billionaire class has profited enormously and have become pandemic profiteers. So that's another element there. And other aspects of the emergency injunction have been to ban any and all financial abuse or fraud by financial, banking, or unjust enrichment entities, which include the Bank for International Transfer, owned by the Rothschild entities, which is the central bank of all central banks. We control the Federal Reserve and the central banks of most countries, with few exceptions. And that's how this pandemic is functions on a global bit, from the 99% up to the 1%. So that's how this thing is the abuse by sentient and strong and other AI, and go on to issue emergency writs of mandamus to claw back unjust enrichment from pandemic profiteers, uh, such as and not limited to Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, vaccination companies, and to establish the South Africa style restorative justice commission, as opposed to retributive justice like the death penalty. This is to take all of that unjust enrichment and put it into a restorative justice trust fund for the planet and for victims, and financial assets and real capital owned by those prosecuted and convicted of crimes against humanity are seized and confiscated. And there's been a whole series of convicted defendants convicted of crimes against humanity of sentences of incarceration without parole. So that has been given also.
You use the phrase writ of mandamus, and you and Ralph, being attorneys, understand writ of mandamus. It's a terribly important concept. Could you explain it for our listeners?
Sure. Going back to the Latin, mandamus is where the court takes the power to order things done. And so the court goes in and claws back unjust enrichment. The court goes in and sets up a restorative justice. You know, it really takes a hands-on, it where the court orders. So that's what we've done there. And that's the basic.
Most David-y of the David and Goliath possibilities, but that doesn't mean that it has no power, and it doesn't mean that it has no reality. Quite importance have choices about whether they are exposed to 5G. They have choices about whether they accept the vaccine. It's